The use of self-disclosure on the part of the nurse has received considerable attention in the nursing literature. On the one hand, there are those who propose that when the nurse does self-disclose, the client is encouraged to reveal more about himself. On the other hand, there are those who contend that self-disclosure on the part of the nurse will shift the focus from the client's concerns to those of the nurse. In this program, we will look at what self-disclosure is, how self-disclosure can impact on the client, how to appropriately self-disclose, and when it is appropriate to self-disclose. It should also be noted that the program will focus on direct verbal self-disclosure of the nurse in the context of counseling clients. What is self-disclosure? In a sense, everything the nurse does or says is disclosing something about him. A working definition of self-disclosure is that it is sharing personal information about yourself, your experiences, your attitudes, and your feelings. Self-disclosure can help to develop trust and rapport with the client, as well as create more balance in the relationship between nurse and client. The nurse can appear to be more personable to the client. Self-disclosure can also normalize his experiences, help him to feel that he is not weird or stupid, for example. The credibility of the nurse can also be enhanced. The key is judging when and how to share personal information. Relatively superficial remarks about oneself can help to develop rapport with the client. For example, telling a client who is a fisherman that your grandfather was also a fisherman can create a connection. Less superficial disclosure needs to be carefully considered as to whether it is appropriate or not. A golden rule is that self-disclosure is used only if it will benefit the client, will help him manage his problems more effectively. Obviously, this is a judgment call which will take into account such factors as the characteristics of the client, the nature of the problems, and the characteristics of the nurse. As Egan says, current research does not give us definitive answers about when to self-disclose. Helper self-disclosure is at present not a science, but an art. There are some helpful guidelines for the use of self-disclosure, however. First of all, it should be used to enable clients to open up to you, or to enable them to better reach their goals, not to meet your own needs. For example, Joan, a nurse who has recently experienced the death of her father and is still struggling with her sense of loss, is talking with a client who is experiencing a similar situation. Note what happens when this nurse self-discloses.
Were you close to your dad?
Oh, my dad and I were very close. He lived with us for the past 2 years because of his illness. His quality of life wasn't good, but it was still so hard to let go.
Oh, I understand. I understand. My dad just passed away recently as well. He was in heart failure for 6 months, and physically it was hard to see him, you know, the way he was suffering, but emotionally it was even harder because he couldn't do the things he wanted to do. He couldn't go to church, he couldn't drive his car. It was just so sad to see him like that. And in a way I was relieved when he passed away. But it was sad because I couldn't talk to him anymore. We had such a good relationship and I couldn't talk to him anymore.
I'm so sorry to hear that. Must have been some hard on you and your family. Is your mother still living?
Yes, Mom is still living, but she has problems too, so I don't know where it's going to end.
In this exchange, the nurse quickly shifts to discussing her situation. She discloses more than is necessary, and it appears that she needs to talk. The client's response also focuses on the nurse, and you get the feeling that the roles are reversed. If the conversation continues on in this way, with Joan frequently disclosing her feelings, the helping process will be ineffective. Timing is of the utmost importance when it comes to self-disclosure. Revealing information about yourself too early in the relationship will likely turn the client off. Self-disclosure works better once rapport has been established and the client is comfortable